Hey everybody, welcome back to the Chaotic Little Book Corner. My name's Acacia. Today it is onesie weather again. I know some of you guys hate these onesies, but I love them and I'm gonna wear them because I adore them. But I did put on lipstick to make it fancy. So I think we're in a good place. So I have been reading a lot. I have read all of 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 books so far in the month, and that's quite a bit. I was hoping to read a book a day, but that did not happen because a couple of them got a little dry and slowed me down. But 10 books is a lot, and I need to review them all prior to the next wrap-up, because if I read another 10 books, we're going to have 20 books, and I don't want to do a 20-book wrap-up. That seems a little bit excessive. So we're going to do part 1 of my November wrap-up today, and we're going to dive into them in order of least to most enjoyed. There are books ranging from meh to, oh my god, I absolutely adore this, everybody needs to read it. So we have a good mix. The first book and the least enjoyed was Mythomania by Peter Conrad, Tales from Our Times, From Apple to Isis. I don't really know what to tell you. I thought this was dry. I thought it was boring. I thought it was poorly developed. I thought it had less information than I was hoping for, but it had less valuable information than I was looking for and more boring information that I was looking for. So this was really not my type of book. It was a very clear nonfiction book. It's what nonfiction is perceived to be and can sometimes be when done incorrectly. I'm going to keep it on my shelf because it had some facts on it that I found kind of interesting, but I'm not going to be crazy about it and jumping up and down about it and shouting it from the rooftops. It just didn't do it for me. Then we have Beyond the Pale by Emily Urquhart. Emily Urquhart is the mother of a young girl who was diagnosed with albinism. And so as her daughter was diagnosed with albinism, she decided to research the condition and try and find out more about the condition on a worldly scale. So she researched the folklore, the myth, and the hidden genes that are involved in this diagnosis, and she came up with some really interesting conclusions. I enjoyed this book. I didn't dislike it. I just thought that there was some factors of it that I was hoping for more folklore, more information about the history of the folklore behind albinism. It was really sad. So some of these facts in this book really broke my heart, such as some people with albinism are considered less than human or secondary citizens, and it was completely devastating and it broke my heart. I really thought that there was some great facts and points in this. I just wish that there'd been more folktale to it, if that makes sense. Then we have Science in Wonderland, The Scientific Fairy Tales of Victorian Britain by Melanie Keane, and it was good. Like, it was decent. I enjoyed it. I definitely found that I was fascinated by the idea of fairyland being almost within your mind and being a part of the brain in which people were considered mentally unstable if theirs was out of whack. I thought it was a really interesting conversation about how the culture was based on scientific belief, and there was this hope that dragons were real because they had found dinosaur bones and they couldn't find any other explanation for them aside from dragons. It was just really interesting. It talked a lot about what was believed in these days and what was considered truth in these days, and how there was an element of just trying to define truth and only tell truths to children, which kind of defeated the purpose of fairy tales, but it also really made for an interesting raising of children. There was a really, really intense factor of things being specifically a certain way in life during the Victorian era that I learned more about in another book that I read about, which I'll tell you about at the end of this video. And it was really, really clear to me that there was a perfect ideal for how life was supposed to be led, and to live that perfect ideal, you had to believe certain things, and to not believe those things were to be crazy or unstable, and that was just not acceptable. And so it was really interesting to read how that was developed and how it was executed. The Black Dahlia Red Rose by Pugh Eatwell. I feel really disheartened by this book. Not in a, I feel disheartened that it was a bad book. I just feel really devastated by this story and by this premise and by this history. The death and murder of the young girl who died was just horrid. It was grotesque. It was human acts at its worst. Elizabeth Short is the woman who died, and she did not deserve to go like that. The murder was foul. It was unnatural. It was very clear that there was an element of hatred towards this woman for who she was. It was a personal attack. It was really gruesome, really grotesque, and really violent. And to read this book was really, really hard, and it really, really hit me. It was a really good conversation about this murder that was so dark and so detached. It was just really interesting to dive into, but it was written in a way that you really didn't have a chance to step back and distance yourself from the murder. You were in the story, and you were in it from the beginning, where you find Elizabeth's body, and you just are pushed into this story, and you have to see it from the get-go, and you have to start diving into what happened, and you hear all the police reports and all the conversations about it and what happened and who did what, and it's terrible, and it's awful that this ever happened. I really respect and admire the author for having dived into such a dark and gruesome conversation. I definitely think that this is a book that I will keep on my shelf and probably revisit, because I think that there's facts in here that I missed. I think that is a really cryptic, disturbing fact about myself, that I'm so fascinated by this murder, but unfortunately I am. There's such an element of fascination to me about a woman who was trying to make it in Hollywood, who was completely destroyed by greed and narcissism and darkness. It was just, The Fact of a Body, a Murder, and a Memoir by Alexandra Marenzo-Levich. Again, this really struck a chord with me, and it was hard to read. It broke my heart. It was really difficult to dive into this and to discuss murder and death and whether or not the death penalty is fair, whether or not the death penalty is right. Do people deserve to die for crimes that they commit? If they if they're forgiven, is that enough? If they feel remorse, is that enough? What constitutes needing a death penalty? What constitutes not getting the death penalty? Child rape or murder, is that a higher crime than than an adult murder or rape? It was it shook me, and it shook me hard, and it made me uneasy and scared and really sad and frightened, and I didn't sleep right. I never read this one or this one at night. I couldn't. It was too much. It was too real, too factual. It was too close to reality, and it made me completely uneasy, and it made me completely lose sleep. It was devastating to read, and I think that if you are interested in this book, this is the premise of a woman who is looking into whether or not she wants to work with people who are on death row. And the man who she is first introduced to as the one that they are trying to save is a man who raped and murdered a child, and she becomes very much aware and links it to her own past where she was sexually abused by a family member, and you dive into that and her history and what that looks like, and it hits me in the stomach, and it hits me hard. It was good, but oh my god, it was just hard to read. Then Trainwreck, The Women We Love to Hate, Mock, and Fear, and Why. This was really good. I really enjoyed this. This is a really good conversation about feminism and what happens with women in the public eye and how we like to bring them down. And we like to do it as a society. We like to have women who are like at the top of their game and then shove them all the way down into the darkest corners of the world and make them be destroyed. We did it to Hillary Clinton. We did it to Britney Spears. We did it to Kim Kardashian, who, the thing about them is that all three of them were able to come back and continue to do what they were doing and overcome the fact that we decided to tear them down as a society. We decided to publicize their worst moments. We decided to publicize their sex tapes. We decided to publicize child rearing and their existence of losing and having trouble with things like emails. It was really, really clear that a lot of what happened to women in our history is that we've decided that we like to drag them down, and we don't do it to men as often. There's a lot happening in the news right now that is showing what we see as the threshold for inappropriate for men behavior, and I'm really glad that we've decided that this is not a tolerable experience that we're willing to let go of. Sexual assault is not a conversation that we should be hemming and hawing about. It is something that we should absolutely say, no, this is not okay. But it took years to get to the point where we were saying, actually, no, we don't accept sexual assault as acceptable. But we've been telling women for years that for them to be sexual, or for them to be powerful, or for them to be smart, or for them to be bold, it is completely unacceptable and wrong. And we've been willing to tear them down and then watch them burn as they go. And I myself found my own complete shame in the fact that I watched some of these meltdowns occur and I judged these girls, and I feel so guilty for that, and I feel so wrong about that, and I feel like there was no call for me to ever have considered these women someone that I should be allowed to judge, because I don't know the full story, and they're only showing the worst of the story. They talked about the time when I was probably in my early 20s, maybe late teens. Paris Hilton, Lindsay Lohan, and Britney Spears all were photographed without underwear on, and they talked about how the photographers had to be at vaginal level in order to take these pictures. So these cameramen were right at these girls' vaginas, taking pictures of them and making sure that they were there. And it was a sexual exploitation of these women. Rather than shaming these men for taking pictures of women's vaginas, we were shaming the women for wearing clothes that we deemed unfit. And that was really groundbreaking. I don't know if I how I feel about a lot of things now, but I'm glad I have this book to kind of help me along. I feel a lot of anger and a lot of shame and a lot of guilt, and I really, really recommend this book if you're interested in diving into that conversation. Then The People Are Going to Rise Like the Waters Upon the Shore by Jared Yates Sexton. I really recommend this book to anybody who's interested to find out what happened in the 2016 election. This is a universal overall conversation about it. It talks about how hate and defamation of character and bullying were a huge part of the campaign, not just on the candidate side, but also on the followers' side, on all sides. So all three of the candidates that were very largely in the running, so Bernie, Hillary, and Donald Trump, all had followers that instilled hate and did violent acts and responded with cruelty and judgment on the other side, and were unable to separate themselves from the hate that they felt towards the opposites. It was really, really hard to read and really, really valuable to go into. It felt like there was a lot of information that I had really not conceived of, where there was a lot of blame to go around on all sides. I definitely thought that this was an interesting conversation, and I think that if you're curious about the 2016 elections, this is the most comprehensive overall conversation about all three sides of the candidacies. So I really enjoyed that. Then these are my top 3 of the month so far. So whether or not these are going to be in the top 5 of the month, I don't know. I can guarantee you one of them will be. That is not going to be misplaced. But I think 2 of them are in the running, but I don't know. So This Is What Happened by Hillary Rodham Clinton. I adored this book so much that I went out and bought it on audiobook, and I'm now re-listening to it, which means I'm reading it for 2 times in 1 month because I need to process this sadness that I have. And I've been crying the whole way through. I've been emotional the whole way through. I have felt sadness and anger and fear and devastation, and I have felt all the emotions that I felt during the 2016 elections all over again, and I am so happy that I read this book. It was really, really poignant. It was really intense. It definitely had Hillary take some of the blame. That was the thing that really inspired me, is that she definitely takes responsibility for actions and moments that she should have seen and should have done more for, or things that she should have done differently on the campaign trail. She takes responsibility, which was really, really admirable, and I really recommend this book if you are curious about Hillary as a human, if you are curious about the 2016 elections, if you are curious about how the elections went down. It really kind of dives into it, but it's not a comprehensive conversation about the entire electoral conversation. It is really just focused on Hillary and her side of the election and what she saw and what she experienced and what she did wrong. I really, really recommend this book. I think it's fabulous, and I highly, highly recommend it. Then we have Unmentionable. This is fabulous. I love this. This is by Teresa O'Neill. I adore this. I adore this. This is so fabulous. So this is a conversation about Victorian women and their experience in the Victorian era. I got so many facts, so much information, so much privilege was checked. Like, I am beyond excited by this book. I think it is so fantastic. I think it is so wonderful. I think it is so well developed. I think it is just one that any woman should read. If a man wants to read it, I highly recommend it, but you will be getting into the conversations about periods and going to the bathroom. So your comfort level is on you. I definitely think that all women should read this in general. I think that this is definitely one that kind of checks you on your experience today and what it's like and how far we've come and what the experience of a daily life woman would be in the Victorian era. And this just talks about what it would be like to be a middle-class American or UK woman. This does not go into the conversation of what it would be like to be lower or the high class. It just talks about the middle class. And it shows you such a wonderful exploration of that existence. I can't recommend it higher. I can't. This is a 5-star read. It's fantastic. I can't recommend this more. It's fantastic. Go read it. Absolutely 100% go read it. And then my number 1 pick so far this month is Shirley Jackson's A Rather Haunted Life by Ruth Franklin. I have also picked up this one on audiobook because I loved it so much that I wanted to have it on audio just so that I can listen to it on occasion when I'm driving or when I have times that I want to listen to something more interesting. I love the Hillary Clinton audiobook like I do. It gives me a lot of hope and excitement because I get to hear Hillary read it. But this is fabulous. I absolutely adore this. So this breaks down Shirley Jackson and all of her works, and it analyzes each one, and it talks about them and what they meant to her and what they meant to society and what they represented. And they are so fantastic, and they're so fantastic. This is so fantastic that I have decided that next year my challenge to myself is going to be 2 things. 1, I'm going to read a nonfiction book every single month. 1 book. I can read more if I want, but I'm going to have 1 nonfiction book a month for sure. And 2, I'm going to read all of Shirley Jackson's work. And I am so excited, and I can't tell you how excited I am. I keep really like aching to read her books again this time. I have 3 of them that I've read so far, so they will be rereads for me, but I'm going to be reading the rest of them, and I've been picking them up slowly but surely. I am so excited, and I'm so happy to be able to do this, and I'm so pleased to be able to experience her books all in 1 year, and I'm really looking forward to that experience. So those are the 10 books that I have read so far this month. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you loved it, please click that subscribe button and give us some love and join the chaotic little book corner. I will talk to you guys in the comments down below. I will see you in my next video. Bye.